You're listening to the Departure Lounge podcast with your host, Tom Whittle. Your ticket to the home of aviation podcasts.
It's not Sunday night, it's Wednesday night, and you know what that means. A very good evening, everybody, to episode 18 of the Departure Lounge podcast here on the Departure Lounge YouTube channel, and of course, if you're listening on Spotify, hello to you as well. My name is Tom Whittle, and joining me this evening, standing in once again, is Ian Hartley. Ian, good evening to you. Are you well?
Yep, I'm very well, thank you, Tom. Are you well? Good evening to you, and it's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. It's very odd to do one during the week because we haven't done one during the week since the podcast began, but here we are. So yes, very well indeed. I'm looking forward to this show in particular.
Absolutely.
So yes, hope everybody is well this evening. We've got a couple of people in there. We'll say hello to Oliver Steinmetz, Trains and Aviation, and Samuel Taylor Ackroyd as well says hello. So hello, good evening everybody to the midweek special show. So a quick sort of note as per normal. For those watching on YouTube, you can see on the screen it's just my face. Jez no-showed again. So I am flying solo today. And of course Ian will be here to read out your comments and ask your questions for this evening's guest, which we will bring on shortly. But yes, so we'll do some housekeeping, get the housekeeping out the way. So we are, like I said, on Spotify. You can listen to this episode back once it goes live tomorrow evening. And of course, you can also listen to all the episodes previous to this on there as well, wherever you go. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Our accounts are on the screen for YouTube and of course in the description below. So give us a follow if you want to keep up to date with everything that's happening with the podcast. A nod in the direction of the channel sponsor, airspots.com, continually doing a wonderful job as per normal. And of course, as always, if you wish to become a guest on the show, all you have to do is drop us a message on any of the social medias that we've just mentioned, and we will get you on as soon as we can. Other than that, Ian, let's do this.
Really, ready when you are.
Fantastic. So, we announced on Sunday that we were doing a midweek special, and we've been very much looking forward to this one ever since. And the time has come where we can bring him on. So, joining us this evening is the one and only Jeb Brooks, who has a massive following on YouTube and social media, and we are super privileged to have you here. So, Jeb, are you well?
Hello, I am so well and excited to be here on the Departure Lounge. Thank you very much for having me.
Not a problem. Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure for us to have you on. So yes. Anybody that has any questions for Jeb throughout the evening, we are going to be here for the next sort of 90 minutes or so. Get them into the chat, and we will get the questions asked to Jeb. Throughout and as and when. So. Yes, so let's do this. So we'll kick things off just with sort of your standard question as to where did your love of aviation come from?
I think that, like most of us, and I'll say us because I think that the folks who are listening to this podcast fall into this category. It happened sometime at a young age. You know, I'm not exactly sure if it was a visit to an airport or just seeing an airplane fly over, but ever since I was a little guy, I've just been drawn to aviation and all things related to it, but specifically commercial aviation. It's interesting. The military side of things, the general aviation side of things, just aren't as interesting to me as the big jets going long haul. It's just always been something I've loved.
So it's kind of different to sort of like a lot of people that I know that have kind of gone from sort of they get in they get into the sort of the love of aviation through the military side, and then obviously jump onto the civilian side. So you're kind of sort of the flip side of that, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm the backwards version of that.
Yeah. we'll stick with the flip side. Backwards just sounds a bit odd.
Yeah, the flip side of it.
Yeah. But no, that's great. So do you remember sort of? I mean, we're just going off the top here. Do you remember sort of like the first sort of memory that you had sort of in aviation in terms of like the first plane that you saw, or sort of that first sort of real moment that kind of made you go, right, this is, I really like this?
Yeah, so I remember my very first flight was in a Shorts 360, American Eagle, from here in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I'm based. It's my home, up to Washington, D.C., Washington's National Airport. And it was a relatively short flight, but I have really vivid memories of just the first feeling of the first time lifting off the ground. I then flash forward to some flights, in Fokkers up to the northeast of the United States that have fond memories. But really the first one where it kind of locked in for me, I must have been, 10 or 11 years old, 9 or 10, something like that, flying in a United Airlines 727 from Chicago O'Hare up to Minneapolis. And United Airlines has this really cool feature where they will allow passengers to plug in a headset and listen to the action from air traffic control to the cockpit. So I was plugged into that the whole time and just eyes glued out the window. It was really that flight that launched me into this passion for aviation. And to this day, the 727 just ranks up there as one of my all-time favorite airplanes. Unfortunately, I didn't get enough experience flying it. That was the only time I ever had the chance to fly in a 727, at least up to this point. I mean, maybe there'll be some freighter company that has one that'll invite me on. That'd be pretty epic. But such a great airplane and such a great memory. But I would say those are kind of the three big ones. It's that Shorts 360, which is, depending on who you ask, either a really beautiful plane or a really hideous one. And then those Fokkers, and then, of course, that 727.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, a lot of people, they normally have like their first flight on, like a standard kind of like, say, like a 727, back in the day, or like a relatively recent kind of short haul plane, A320s and stuff. But to have sort of that first experience on a Shorts 360, that must have been a really cool experience as well.
Well, it's just the way those things look, and if anybody listening is not familiar with the airplane or doesn't have Google in front of them, it's a box with these little twigs out the side of it that somehow provide lift with two little engines, and it goes. It's such a cool airplane. They are
super strange. Super strange. And there was the I'm trying to think now. Is it the Caravan as well? The sort of the twin tail one.
Yeah. That really even more boxy one.
Yeah,
oh, gosh,
proper
yeah.
box. Yeah, the proper box one. The flying car, as I think a lot of people called it.
Yeah.
But no, fantastic. We'll go into the comments. Got a couple of questions that have come in now, so we'll get a couple of those answered. So one is from Samuel Taylor Ackroyd. So good evening to you. He says, "What is your favourite aircraft type?"
Oh man, well, the honest answer is whatever I'm going to be flying next. I'm always excited about what's coming. But if I had to say just in general, it'd be the Airbus A350. And it's always dangerous saying you like a particular plane because lots of other people like different kinds of planes. But I'll tell you why the A350. I have a fantastic memory, and I was able to make a video. It's one of my very first videos about Delta Airlines' inaugural A350 flight from Detroit over to Tokyo. And it was just an amazing experience to be on. Really, that was my first inaugural flight ever. And so just great memories of that experience, number one. Number two, I really love long-haul flying. If I were to boil it all down, what I love the most about aviation is just how far it can take you. And that A350 has such long legs to it, which is great. And it's just a beautiful airplane. I mean, I just think it looks so sleek and what I think a modern airplane should look like.
Yeah, I have to. I probably have to agree and say that. I mean, we've had like loads of conversations on this podcast, sort of over the weeks, about sort of whether people prefer sort of the Dreamliner to the A350 or vice versa. And I've always gone A350 each time, just because. I mean, I like both, but I think for me, the A350 just. I mean, it's one of those ones you look at it, and whilst it kind of looks like I always say it looks like a chubby A330, but it is sort of it's like you say, it's sleek, it's beautiful, and it's like I don't know, I just think it turns heads a little bit more than the Dreamliner.
It's the winglets. I mean, that little upturn of the winglet. It's beautiful. And thinking about the Dreamliner, for me, I had the chance to fly from Perth to London on the Qantas flight, and the crew locked the windows down so you couldn't see out. It's a nighttime flight that direction. There wasn't much to see, but to lose that agency, that ability to control my destiny with the window, especially when it's a nighttime flight, it kind of turned me off to the Dreamliner a bit. And that's like you all on the podcast. I know my friends. Paul Stewart and Dennis Bunnick, other YouTubers, and I often have that same debate.
Yeah.
And it's a fun one to have because at the end of the day, there's no wrong answer. It's about what you enjoy. And I think that's one of the cool things about this aviation community is just that we're able to have debates about things that for most people are completely inane and make no sense, but for us are just a fun conversation.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, I know a lot of people get a little bit iffy if you sort of prefer one over the other, but like you said, there is no wrong or right answer really in terms of opinions to which one you prefer, and that's kind of I think that's kind of the best thing about this this sort of hobby really, is that you can sort of say to somebody that you like this plane, and they'll go, well, I like this one better, and you can kind of go, okay, that's fine, rather than sort of anything else, and they'll just verbally abuse you for it. So.
well put.
So yeah, long live this hobby. Samuel Ackroyd again asking another question. He says, "What is your favourite airline?"
I just ask a question before can I just butt in there and I just want to ask you a question, Jeb, following on from your Perth to London flight. Now, I was watching this flight earlier on today, and the video's 34 minutes or something like that, but the flight is 17 hours long. It's a massive flight, isn't it? Now, I remember you were actually saying about you couldn't open the blinds, could you, not to see out and what have you, which it was quite disappointing. I think you were flying sort of around Saudi Arabia, around that area, and to be able to see out at window even on the night would have been fantastic. But how do you feel? I mean, you have a kip, you perhaps watch a couple of movies or something, but how do you fill your timing for that length of journey on such a long flight? You never get to the point where you just sat there twiddling your thumbs just waiting for it to end?
Well, I definitely don't want to forget the airline question, but I think you raise a really good point that's worth spending a little bit of time on.
Go for it.
So that flight, that was part of a really crazy itinerary. I in the before times, as I like to say, I tried to take at least one trip around the world a year. It was sort of a weird goal that I had, and that was one of those trips. And it had begun with the inaugural Singapore Airlines flight from Newark, New York, to Singapore. From there, I flew with Malaysia Airlines on to Kuala Lumpur and then to Sydney, where I picked up Qantas to Perth and then went on to London with that Perth to London flight, and then came back to the U.S. with Virgin, I think. And I share that whole itinerary to say that was sort of a test of endurance, because Newark to Singapore, longest flight in the world, even now, at something like 19 hours and change, 19 and a half hours, followed by that 17-hour flight. It was, you make a good point, it was really mentally taxing, because there are only so many movies you can watch.
Yeah.
But that's basically what you did, and what I did, and what I really found is that making YouTube videos, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that side of it, was another great way to pass time. And it really, to invest the time to create that content and share the experience was another wonderful way to share that. I'll make one more point, and then I want to get to Samuel's question. And it's that after that flight, and I got home after whatever that was, like 52 hours straight without leaving airports or airplanes. I was so sick, and I caught some cold or something along the way. And when I was editing that QF9 flight, I couldn't hear very well. So the audio. So thank you for listening, Ian, because the audio on that video is really rough. Because it sounded great to me, but I couldn't hear it through my cold. So just a side note there. Hey, anyway, back to the airline question.
Yes.
My favorite airline also depends, and I'll give you a straight answer here in a second, but it really does depend on where I'm going. I like to take the flag carrier of whatever country I'm going to. I find it's a really cool way to kind of get in the mood for wherever I'm heading early, and to kind of get a flavor for where I'm going. So that's my number one answer to that question. I think here in the U.S., it's really shifting. And it's shifting because the airlines, as a result of everything that's happened over the last 18 months here and around the world, have really adjusted their approach to service, I guess, is for lack of a better term. And so my current favorite, for years, it was always Delta Airlines, because where I live in the U.S., the easiest way to access the rest of the country was through Delta Airlines. Just they had the most service to my city. But over the last year or so, that's shifted, and it's tough to say whether I have a favorite. I think my two favorites right now are probably JetBlue and Alaska, but I'm finding Alaska Airlines is just quickly becoming my favorite. I really enjoy their quirky approach to the flight experience, the really friendly service, and so forth. So to give a straight answer to the question, what's my favorite airline, is really tough. But right now, I think Alaska's inching out here in the U.S. ahead for me.
Fantastic.
Can I add to that as well, please, Jeb? It was when you mentioned Alaska, and it got me thinking. I think did you fly Q400 or something with them? I think you did, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, Horizon Airlines. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Now, that got me thinking about, because your Jeb score, what you call your Jeb score, is a massive part of what you do on your YouTube videos, and I think everybody who watches your videos really enjoys the final part of it, where you come with your Jeb score. And obviously, the departure lounges and the service, what you actually get in your airports, really important to you, and I suppose it's important, and it's part of the experience and what have you. Do you find that visiting smaller places, like if you went to Alaska, for instance, or if you flew to, I don't know, Honolulu or something like that, that the service you receive in these smaller hubs is a lot more personal and a lot better than what you'd experience, say, in JFK or something like that?
It's a really interesting question, and I am going to answer it. Well, I'll come back to what I was going to say. Yeah, I find that what happens is there are regional differences in the approach to service, without a doubt, and I think some of that's cultural or whatever. And what I was going to say originally, and I wanted to couch it with that, is if you look at where a crew is based, and I could really only speak to this with any authority out here in the States. You'll notice that airline crews from various bases have different, I hesitate to use the word culture, but how about this? Have different approaches to service. And so you'll notice that Seattle-based crews, for example, for Delta and Alaska, they both have hubs there, or crew bases there, are really friendly and affable folks, And so whenever I hear a flight attendant announce a welcoming on board from your Seattle-based crew, I'm like, all right, this is going to be a good flight. So yeah, I think you're exactly right to say that while there are great flight attendants and airline crew and train crew from all over the place in all different kinds of bases. I think there are some that really shine more consistently than others.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. It just got me thinking about that. And where would you say, in all your travels, where would you say has been what's your best experience? I'm sure you've had plenty, but is there anything what stands out?
In terms of sort of in-flight experience or on the ground?
No, in the lounge experience, the all like checking in experience, and the airport experience, I suppose, rather than the
Pre-flight.
flight experience.
Oh, that's a cool question. Gosh, there's nothing worse on radio than dead air, but I got to think about that. There've been so many that have stood out. I mean, Perth, sort of a smaller city with a couple 3 million people. I mean, that was a really nice experience. I think part of it was because that flight is such a unique cornerstone for Qantas, but incredibly customer-focused ground crew and sort of ground experience. That was a wonderful one. Let's see. I've had great experiences all over the place.
Yeah.
What is coming to mind though is St. Helena in the South Atlantic.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to. This was my last trip in 2020. My last international trip in 2020. Actually, my most recent international trip. Come to think of it. And I had the chance to spend some time there at that airport and kind of go behind the scenes with them. And it was a really fantastic experience because I think it was a smaller airport, very excited about air service, very focused on it, and a really positive group of people.
Absolutely. I think it's quite a relatively new thing for St. Helena as well, isn't it? They haven't had the airport there very long, have they?
You're exactly right.
Yeah. I saw that one. It was quite an interesting one, that, with the way they have to make sure that everything's got to be absolutely perfect, haven't it? Because you only get one go at it, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit. What was your thoughts on that when you were sat there? Were you praying to your God, or do you just take it in your stride?
Sheer
something
excitement.
Like that.
It was
just pure excitement.
And, just absolute, just love of the. Yeah, I guess I did. I'd done my research. I understood sort of the risks associated with that airport, and it crossed my mind. But not. The pilots and the airplanes on that route are so well trained for it. There's really not much to worry about. In fact, they've been flying. Titan Airways has been flying 757s down there through I think Accra. On expatriation and supply missions out of the UK.
That's right, yeah. All
right, yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah, no, they've only got a handful of pilots who can fly into it, haven't they?
Exactly.
Yeah. It was a fantastic experience that we're about. Can I hand back over to you, Tom?
You can, yeah, that's fine. A comment from Samuel Taylor Ackroyd. He says, I would just like to say to you, Jeb, that your channel is really cool, and whenever he watches your content, he really enjoys it.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
So not just us here that really enjoy it. So keep getting your questions in for Jeb. We are here for, up until about 9 o'clock UK time. And we'll get them answered. What I want to just talk about very quickly, and I know Ian said about what the best experiences were for you in terms of like pre-flight and that, but have you had any sort of weird experiences that have stuck to mind that you think, gosh, I don't know if I want to do that again?
No. I pinch myself when I think about all the amazing opportunities that I've had and experiences I've enjoyed. And
we've lost him.
Yeah, it's disappeared.
Oh, we've lost. We'll get him back. I think he's just he's accidentally sort of gone. We will get him back, like I said. But yeah, like I said, keep bringing questions in. I think he's back. He is back.
I'm back.
He's back. We had to fill for time then. No, you carry on what you were saying.
Yeah, I was I would. There's nothing I would not repeat relative to YouTube, and specifically the travels I've had. Even the bumpy, turbulent air. I mean, there's nothing. And the go arounds and all that kind of stuff. That's just part of the adventure.
But nothing sort of out of the ordinary in terms of, like I say, especially sort of. I say out of the ordinary, maybe like a bad experience, even if it's not been on a video or anything, like in terms of just, I don't know, maybe someone was like, a check-in person was rude or something.
I mean, yeah, let's see. Look, I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to serve as a gate agent for a day at the Atlanta airport with Delta Airlines. And it was a very eye-opening experience. And what I took away from it is the number of people who are traveling and just pay no attention to the person behind the desk, as though they're an automaton or a computer or something, is surprising and disappointing. I think so many people treat service professionals like they're not even people. And that's too bad. And watching that from the other side of the desk, I was just struck by how often it happens. So I really, I like to say before that experience too, but ever since that experience, I've tried to go the extra mile to be friendly and what I perceive as friendly and kind and empathetic and warm to the people who are helping me go along on my journey. And I think that pays back, and I'm not saying to go over the top with it, but say hello and thank you and please. And so I really, nothing's coming to mind in terms of an interaction with anybody at the airport or in the air who have mistreated me or I perceive as mistreating me. And I think some of that is just, as my friend Dennis Bunnick says, you get what you give. And if you give off that friendly, warm attitude, you tend to get that back. Now, of course, there are bad apples out there, and I'm sure if I rack my brain, I could come up with some examples of things I've seen and that kind of thing. But for the most part, I find people to be, people drawn to this profession tend to be service-oriented folks.
I think you can put that down to anything in life, really. I think even if you go down to your local supermarket and these people who are stacking shelves and people who are delivering parcels to your house and things like that. I think if you go in with a proper attitude and if you can engage with these people and if you can make them smile, I think you've made their day a bit better as well, haven't you? And your own day as well, because you've made somebody happy as well, haven't you? I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So in the long run, then. No sort of bad experiences, which is always a good thing. But yeah, we'll swiftly move on because we were talking sort of before we sort of came on air this evening, and Ian brought up a very good point in terms of sort of a certain flight that you've done. Ian, I'll let you ask this one because obviously you mentioned it, so I'll let you ask this one about BA 001.
Yeah, BA001 from London City. I know you did a video on this particular flight over to New York. So, what were your thoughts and what your experiences are? I mean, I'm sure you've flown out of Heathrow before, and then to fly out of London City and see it from a different perspective, and the whole flight experience and things like that. What did you think, and what are your thoughts on the fact that BA001's no longer with us? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll couch it by answering your second question first and say, okay, I think it's devastating that flight has gone away, and I can understand why. I mean, at the end of the day, as aviation enthusiasts, I think sometimes I can forget that these are businesses and they've got to make money, and if a route is not working for them anymore, then it just isn't working for them anymore. So I can understand that. Now, what did I think of it? I loved it. Oh, man. From the airport on. Now, I'd flown out of London City a couple of times before, but there was something just amazing about flying out on the flagship route of an airport flagship route for an airline. Like, that was really cool. And to know it was this little baby bus that was going to take us all the way back to the East Coast where we lived, that was amazing. I mean, the seat was quirky. It was, not. It had been cutting edge, but it wasn't anymore. But that didn't matter. I mean, this little Airbus A318 was going to chug its way across the pond, and I love the fact that it retained Concorde's flight number. I just thought that was probably the coolest part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then that was my first, maybe one of my first or second pre-clearance experiences in Shannon, which was really slick. It was clear that we were two of the only people who were doing it for the first time. I mean, I think that BA1 passengers, and I guess BA2, were a bit like Concorde passengers in that they were regulars. They used the service a lot. And so we were the odd people out as we were trying to make our way through. Everybody else knew exactly what they were doing. But it was such a neat experience, and one of the ones that I really treasure as I think back. So I am sorry it's gone away. I understand why, and I'm so grateful I had the chance to do it. And as we were talking before we went on the air, I think it's so important, even beyond just aviation, just in life. If you have an opportunity to take advantage of an experience, do it. Don't put it off. If I had put off BA1, man, I feel so grateful to have had the chance to get to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, were there any nods to the Concorde flight or any nods to Concorde while you're on the flight? Well, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I kept trying to figure out the speed, and I was thinking it must be at least Mach 2. No, there was unfortunately not. I think just the flight number. Although the food was elevated, to be sure, so that helped.
Yeah, I think it were predominantly it's a business class flight, I think, isn't it? Or it was.
Yeah, it was, and at the end of the day, the lie flat options in the wide body jets coming out of Heathrow, for most people it was the time savings of leaving London City just didn't do it. But it was, oh man, what a cool thing. I mean, flying along in an A318, there's not much difference. I think there were just a handful of people on the plane. We basically had our private plane across the pond. Yeah,
that's what it was like a private jet. Do you specifically go looking for quirky flights, sort of like the BA001 and things like that, or is it just something that you stumble across, in your journeys?
Oh, I think to answer that, I'll give you a little bit of history and background on me. I think that'll help to frame up the answer. I started out in a consulting role. My brother and I own a consulting company, and I traveled a lot as a part of that work, and would make videos about the flights that I took. And then I had so much fun doing that I started thinking about going outside the bounds of just work trips and turning my vacation time into flying time. And then that's what drove me to find these interesting trips, like United's United 54, which is the 154, which is the island hopper through the Pacific, or the flying to St. Helena. All those kinds of experiences are absolutely dreams for me. And my non-aviation enthusiast friends don't understand why I would, book a trip to Shanghai for 36 hours just because a couple of new airplane types I could catch in there. But you guys get that. I am incredibly privileged that I get to have those kinds of experiences. But it's absolutely for the quirky, interesting, adding to my list of aircraft types or route lines and that kind of thing.
Mm. And where would you say is apart from St. Helena, what about would you sort of go for sort of a quirky airport with a bit of a dodgy approach or something like that, just to experience a bit of a white knuckle ride coming into an airport? Would you do something like that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons, I guess we haven't really talked about my favorite airport, but one of the reasons that Washington National Airport is one of my favorites is because the approach into that airport, if you've ever seen videos or anything like that, it's right on top of Washington, D.C., which has a bunch of restricted airspace around it, along with some, pretty significant noise concerns. So the approach is right over the Potomac River coming in there, and it is, you're turning it literally right before touchdown, and it is a white knuckle approach. I love that. So yeah, I'm all about it.
Yeah, wow. I'm just thinking of Kaitak or something like that. I bet you'd love to have experienced that, wouldn't you, back in there?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We all would.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, well, yeah, true enough, Tom. Yeah.
It's not quite the same experiencing on a flight sim.
No, not at all. No.
You're still feeling gravity like always. That's the giveaway.
Yeah,
that's the thing,
the
isn't
real
it?
thing, though. I mean, that's one of those. You kind of wish you were sort of. I mean, for us, by the time, for me at least, when Kaitak closed, I was 6. So I'm kind of like, I wish I was born like earlier than that, just so I could have maybe sort of gone and experienced it, sort of thing. And it's not something I can experience when I'm 6, especially not on my own. But yeah. So we'll just jump quickly back into the comments. There's quite a few questions here that will get asked. There's one actually from Samuel Taylor Aqua, which I'll save because we'll get onto that shortly. Steve Plains asks about your favourite business/first class experience. Would you say that the BA 001 to JFK was sort of up there, or was there one that sort of tops that?
Oh, that's a great question, and I hate to answer it in a cliched, expected way, but I had the chance to fly with Emirates when their 777 quote unquote game changer first class was installed, and it was over the top. I mean, it was just over the top. But then the other one that was great, and it was great because Emirates, we've all seen that. So there's sort of expectations that go along with what that is. I got to fly Garuda, Indonesia back when they had first class, and I knew nothing about it. And I, in fact, thought that I had booked a business class seat, but somehow it turned into a first class seat. And with first class service, it's a cabin. It was a 777-300 from Narita to Bali. And I think the cabin had 8 seats in it, but I was the only one.
Oh, wow.
And there were 3 flight attendants assigned to me. I mean, it was ridiculous.
You talk about royalty.
Yeah.
I mean, I was embarrassed. It was to the point where, in fact, there was a woman whose job it was to take my. I almost always have a carry-on bag. It was her job to take my carry-on bag with me from the lounge to the airplane, and I'm like, she was a very nice, woman, probably, I don't know, half my size, maybe less, carrying my big bag. I'm like, I can't, let me carry that. And she wouldn't let me. I mean, it was over the top service, made even better because I didn't know what to expect. So it was really, I think that's my answer to the question. It's Garuda Indonesia, which I believe they no longer offer first class. I think I'm right when I say that. I could be wrong.
So it's another experience again, bit like the BA one that you sort of felt very privileged to sort of be able to experience.
Yeah, I which sort of relate on a related point. I keep mentioning Dennis Bunnock. I was just talking to him last night, and we occasionally I'll take on a sponsor for a video, and I was taking the money from that from those sponsorships and put it into an account, and was slowly but surely saving up for the Etihad residence. And by slowly, I mean very slowly. But it was a dream, and I thought one day I'd be able to do it and share that, and because there's just nothing like it. And And when I say there's nothing like it, I mean that literally, since it's gone away. And back to the point earlier about BA1, I think if you have an opportunity to experience anything that you want to try, and you get the chance, I think you should jump at it, because you never know. You never know when it's going to go away.
Definitely, especially with the current times and that. But
everything changes, doesn't it? On the drop of a hat. I was going to ask you, Jeb, about one of your experiences. I never got a chance to actually watch the video, but it was the TWA hotel in New York. I mean, I've seen pictures of it and I've seen like bits of footage of it. But what was the experience like for? Because it's such an iconic building with particularly with the pool on the roof. Did you experience that as well?
Oh, I was so fortunate that day because the weather was beautiful, and I was up on the roof, and I happened to be looking on Twitter, and I saw that the first A380 to land in New York in more than a year was coming on the day that I was there. And so I was able to watch that Emirates A380 come in from Dubai. It taxied, within spitting distance of me, and I was able to see that so close, which was absolutely incredible. The TWA Hotel is such an iconic place, and if you're even a little bit of an aviation enthusiast and you're passing through New York and have the chance to extend your stay, it's absolutely worth it. Right now, as you can imagine, with all the various restrictions and degrees of varying degrees of things opening up and all that, it's a little bit of a disjointed experience. The dining is challenging, but if you approach it with the understanding that hey, it's these are weird times, and that's okay, and I'll be fine. And I just am here to celebrate the history of TWA, the 1960s, and being up close and personal with big jets at JFK. Then there's nothing better.
Oh, no, that's it. I think, the good times will come back one day, won't they? So we can just experience it then when everything's back to normal, can't we?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you say out of I'm sure you've stayed at a few hotels in airports. Obviously, I think TWA is going to be up there with the best of them, but I don't know, what other good experiences you had with hotels in various countries?
Yeah, I think an airport hotel is just...
It's the best at night.
Yeah, it's. I think it's great. It's it feels good to go to sleep right there near where you're coming in or going out of. That's always a relief. That relieves some pressure. But then having iconic views of airplanes right from your window. Let's see, in the U.S. there's the Grand Hyatt in San Francisco. I've yet to stay there, but I've seen pictures from friends. It looks incredible. The Renaissance Concourse Hotel in Atlanta is absolutely amazing with just incredible views of the entire airfield. In Singapore Changi Airport, the hotel right there is amazing. Gosh, where else? London. What is that? What is the hotel right there?
I think you've got the Renaissance, haven't you, at London?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, that's great, because London is like JFK. Heathrow is like JFK in that there's such a variety, as you well know, of carriers coming in there. That's always exciting. It's like I've never been into fishing, but I think that plane spotting is a lot like it, in that you're just sort of hanging out, waiting to see what comes. Although with Flight Radar 24, it's a little less. There's a little less mystery in it, but it's still fun.
Absolutely, yeah. I think any airport. Have you been up to Manchester at all? Manchester Airport.
I have not.
No, you've not been into there. No, that's it. Obviously, it's a lot quieter than what Heathrow is and what have you. But again, it's one of those airports where you get such a mixture of bits of everything from anything from a Cessna right up to an A380. So you get a massive mix of everything, and it's. Yeah, I think airports like that are a lot better, aren't they? I think where you're just getting that mix of everything.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because it just shows the variety of aviation. It's crazy to think about a Cessna landing right in front of an A380. I love that.
Yeah, you see pictures of it. Yeah, it's an awesome sight, isn't it?
Yeah, nothing wrong with a Cessna at all. Like, I recently went up to East Midlands Airport, and about 90% of what I saw were Cessnas, and I was still as fascinated as if they were a 747.
It's that miracle of flight. Like, how does that thing get up in the air? And then it does. It doesn't matter what it is. You're right.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, it still baffles me to this day, to be quite honest.
Especially something as big as the A380.
And let's not even talk about helicopters. How does that work?
I don't know. Physics, isn't it? It's an interesting subject, isn't it? Which I'm not very good at physics, so.
Is it bizarre if I'd sort of say that I sort of maybe know? Like if it like breaking news kind of thing?
What, that you know?
About helicopters? Not too much about helicopters, about how they work and stuff.
I think it's interesting, Tom, but I don't think now's the right time to go into it.
Swiftly move on, quick. Swiftly move on.
Yes, swiftly moving on.
Let's go back into the comments. So Flying with Jonas says hello, everybody. So hello to you.
Hello.
He's also asked the question of, have you ever flown to the Netherlands?
I have many times. As I mentioned, Delta Airlines and I have a long history because of where I live. So, as members of Sky Team, I have used Amsterdam Schiphol Airport a lot, and have very fond memories of it.
Are we still good?
I've got you now.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
I was just saying I've flown to Amsterdam Schiphol Airport many times, and have very fond memories of the airport there.
Fantastic. And who did you fly with there?
I've flown with Delta and KLM, both as a Sky Team enthusiast, I guess you could say. I've used them both. In fact, my very last trip into Europe, my last time in Europe, was transiting through Amsterdam on the way to Cape Town.
Oh, cool.
Have you? I was going to ask if you'd ever had the privilege of, sat in the cockpit during a flight, because it doesn't happen anymore, does it? But have you done something like that?
Unfortunately, I have not in a commercial flight while flying. I have piloted little planes before. I have been in the cockpit before takeoff and after landing, but never in flight. That's a dream that hopefully one day we'll be able to do that kind of thing again.
Yeah. I just thought that. I think it's just a no-go at the moment, isn't it? I think it has been for a few years now, hasn't it? So, so that's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think, is it?
I doubt it.
No, definitely not. No. What are your thoughts on? That was another question I had for you on all the retiring 747s and things like that, because that's another iconic bird that we've lost, I suppose. And what were your thoughts on that?
It's devastating. I mean, seeing all of these airplanes exit before their prime is really sad, but particularly the 747, because of what it means. I mean, it was the first airplane to really shrink the world. I mean, it made it possible to have, I won't say cheap, but more reasonable fares linking cities around the world. Just the economics of it alone, not to mention the beauty of the Queen of the Skies, and to see them put out to pasture is tough. It really is sad. I mean, and I think about, we've been talking a lot about BA1, but there are so many examples of that, of things that we just lost, over the course of the last 18 months or so, and that's really difficult. Not to mention what they represent, which is to say, so many careers, so many jobs, so many people who worked in this industry, who either had to retire early or just lost their jobs because of what's happened. And so, to me, seeing a 747 parked in the desert somewhere is it's sad because of the inanimate object that it is, the airplane, but also what it represents, the connectedness of the world, the people who worked aboard it, the people who traveled aboard it. There's no doubt seeing these airplanes retired before their prime just carries a lot of sadness with it.
I think that's just the way the aviation industry's gone with everything's just twin jets now, isn't it? Your 350s and your Dreamliners doing the same kind of job as a 747, probably for, I don't know, a fifth of the cost, or what, I don't know, a half of the cost, I don't know, but like you say, businesses have to make money, don't they? And it's a business decision, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame, because I think as aviation enthusiasts, we all love a 747 or whatever plane it might be, and we hold this sentiment to that particular piece of machinery, if you want, and then somebody snatches it away from you, and you're sort of heartbroken because you're never going to see it again. But you tend to forget that these people are business owners, and they have to make money, don't they? And it's such a shame. It really, really is.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Cheeky plug. Of me and Ian did a episode, or Sunday actually, just gone, about the 747, and we mentioned about the fact that as much as I'm going to again put my teeth in, quad jets are becoming sort of less desirable and stuff. The whole sort of the current climate, we'll put it, just so we don't get struck upon by YouTube, sort of taking them away early, sort of not giving them the proper send off that we think really that they should probably deserve. Like a big sort of farewell, like a farewell tour or part, like a party type thing, and then have them sort of, like say, snatched away because of obviously what's going on so early than anticipated. It is almost like a bit of a kick in the teeth, really. But yes, we'll go a couple more questions, and then we'll get to sort of your YouTube channel itself. So Samuel Taylor Ackroyd asks, do you ever plan on travelling to Scotland?
Yeah, I have been to just Edinburgh. I'd love to get up further north. I love Scotland. I would absolutely love to get back.
Fantastic. Marco Barrett says, good evening to you, Tom and Jeb. Obviously forgetting about you, Ian, but
that's all right. I'm usually sat in corner just reading comments. So it's not a problem.
No, so good evening to you. And Steve Plains says, current pandemic has clearly sort of massively affected aviation. Did you manage any flights during the time?
Yeah, great question. So we, I think, have been a little bit more open up internally than a lot of places. And I started our first trip after March of 2020. I kind of stopped, completely stopped after I got back from St. Helena. Started traveling again sort of at the end of July of 2020. And our first flight was from here in Greensboro up to Chicago, and then we took a train. So I've really explored Amtrak as a means of transportation, and have found great joy in that. But I've flown a fair amount since July of 2020.
Fantastic. Let's get on to your sort of your YouTube channel, really, because like I said, we have spoken before we sort of came on to do this. How did that sort of start? Because obviously Ian mentioned before about the obviously the Qantas flight traveling from Perth to London. Did it sort of stem from there, or was it a case of like far back and sort of going, well, let's try and sort of try and do something with the whole traveling side of things?
So I my first well, let me back up. I used to watch other YouTubers who made videos about their travels as a means of entertainment, and instead of watching television, I watched the Sam Twees and the Dennis Bunnocks and the Paul Lucases of the world, and really enjoyed watching that content. It was my favorite means of passing the time. And at the time, I was really active traveling for consulting, and it occurred to me that well, if I enjoy watching it, maybe I'd enjoy making it too. And so I started making a video here and there about if I was on an interesting trip or something like that, and found incredible joy not just in making the videos, but also in slowly building a community, which I really love because it was getting a way to connect with people who shared a passion for aviation and travel that I do. But then what I really also found I loved was editing the videos. And if you go back and watch, if you're so inclined, some of my early videos, you'll see how rough the editing and the storytelling was. And not to say I've nailed it by any stretch. I would never claim that. I think that's an ongoing endeavor. I think you can see how much I've learned. And that creative outlet and that learning experience has been really fulfilling on top of it. So the kind of the trajectory of YouTube for me was making occasional bits of content for a means of passing time on a flight, for want of a better term, because I loved watching other people do it. And then it's just become, an extension of my love for, commercial aviation and transportation.
So would you say that sort of you mentioned like Paul Lucas and stuff? Like I watch a hell of a lot of his videos, just because they are fantastic, and it's more like sort of domestic stuff over here in the UK and that. Would you say sort of like I say Paul Lucas sort of inspired you to sort of go ahead with doing sort of like trip reports?
Yeah, absolutely. I Paul and I got together in actually it was before that BA1 flight. So that whole trip was Washington Dulles International Airport to Heathrow to Hong Kong to Shanghai to Frankfurt to London City, back to the East Coast. And in there, before we went off to Hong Kong, we hung out with Paul, and he's been a great inspiration and friend ever since that meeting. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, the people who were making content, before I was making content, were absolutely inspirations to me to give it a go. And I think it's a sign that anybody who wants to do this can do it. It's not like I have any special training. I mean, everything I've learned along the way, and I think Paul would say the same of himself and Dennis and everybody else.
It's a bit of a, like we were saying, sort of off air. It's a bit of like a niche kind of way of doing things, because, like you say, you don't. I mean, if you've got a camera and you're on a flight, I mean, you're pretty much halfway there, aren't you?
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So in terms of anybody sort of that's kind of sat maybe listening, or maybe kind of thinking about sort of wanting to take that route, going, I'd quite like to give that a go myself. I mean, would that be the kind of advice you give them? It's just basically just go and just do it, just give it a go.
Yeah, I think it's two pieces of advice. I made a video. Often people send me emails or direct messages or so forth, asking about what camera I use or stuff like that. And I made a little video answering those questions just because it was easier than typing everything every time. And in there, I give some advice to people who are considering starting this endeavor. And I think the number one thing is to have the confidence to start. That's what held me back for a long time. I didn't think I had the qualifications or the skill to do it. But so number one is just to have the confidence to start. And then number two is to make it your own. It's not about copying the way somebody else does it, because the way that somebody else does it may not be right. Just because I do it a certain way doesn't mean there's not a better way to do it. And,
cool.
Bring your own personality to it. And then number three, just get started. So just put something out there.
to add on to sort of add on to that, sort of how, I mean, I know from sort of, I've read sort of stories from people that say that, you know, some airlines kind of get a bit funny when you know, if you take a sort of a camera on board to do these sort of trip reports and stuff. Sort of how, I mean, sort of in simple terms, maybe, how is it easily done, or is it a case of maybe getting sort of permission first just to be on the sort of safe side?
I think a couple of responses to that. I mean, I think number one, you need to know what the rules are for the airline, and if an airline is explicitly said, you know, this is not allowed, then don't do it. You know, that said, you know, my personal preference is, you know, I wouldn't want somebody coming into my workplace and pointing a camera at me to observe my work. So I'd really do my best not to do that to anybody working in an airport or an airline. So if you notice, actually it's funny, I was reading a comment earlier today. Somebody was criticizing me for this, but I really don't show any crew members. Like pretty much the only person you'll be able to recognize in one of my videos is me, or maybe Suzanne, my fiance. We call her the creative director. Other than that, I try to either blur people out or have it be a wide angle where you can't really recognize people. And I think that makes me feel a little better about it. Now, whether that's the right answer or not, that's up for debate. But that's just my 2 cents about that. So, number one, to answer your question, make sure you're familiar with the airline's policy. And number two, be respectful of other people in public places. And I know the rules in Europe are much different than here in the U.S. along those lines as well. The other thing I'll highlight along those lines is, and we were talking a little bit about this as we were preparing for the show, but several years ago, I wanted to connect with the CEO of Delta Airlines. I thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation with him for YouTube. And so I sent him an email, and he wrote back, and we sat down and chatted. And I was explaining to him what this was, you know, YouTube trip reporting and YouTube, you know, making videos about flights. And he cut me off. He stopped me from talking, I mean, in a friendly way, not a rude way. And he said, "This is excellent. This is the CEO of the airline. This is great. This is free marketing." And if you think about it, it's not even free marketing, because I'm buying a ticket.
Yeah.
I'm paying the airline to tell their story. And that's like, I wish in my other business, I wish we had customers who loved us so much that they were willing to pay us and then tell their story, you know, on their own dime with their own effort. But that just goes to show how aviation enthusiasm works. So I think a lot of airlines, and I can certainly speak from firsthand experience, Delta Airlines being one, understand the value of this. But I think the danger, to just put one final thought on it, is that, you know, if the world, or if an airplane gets full of people who are sticking cameras in other people's faces, then that kind of takes away from the experience, and I think that's difficult.
Have sort of airlines sort of come to you and sort of recognize, you know, not recognize, I'll go again. They've come to you and sort of maybe come across your video and sort of praised you for it?
Yeah, after the fact, that's happened a number of times. You know, there's a funny one. We went on safari maybe 2 years ago, and we flew with Air Kenya Airways, Air Kenya, which is a domestic airline, a safari, you know, link kind of a thing. Yeah. And I made a video about that flight, and every so often I'll get a random text message from a friend from somewhere in my life, and you know, outside of aviation. I say, "What are you doing on this screen?" So Air Kenya plays my video in their lobby on repeat, showing what it's like to fly on it, which is great. And I'll tell you the best one. Another fellow trip reporter, familiar to you all probably, Noel Phillips, was down there flying with them not too long ago, and he sent me a text with the same thing. So it's funny to see that kind of like small world kind of thing happening.
Yeah. I suppose that's quite a sort of an experience, really, to kind of be told that an airline's actually playing one of your videos to show its customers what it's like to fly on board.
this is, this is a heady experience. Yes, it is very much.
I think it's validation as well for you, Jeb, when you were saying before about your editing skills and things like that. To know that an airline is actually showing some of your work, it goes to show that you're doing your editing right, aren't you? It's got to be good gratification
I
for
appreciate
you.
that. Yeah, it's it just goes to show that some enthusiasm for a subject and some willingness to learn and develop your skills. You never know where that's going to lead you. You never know.
No, that's it. It certainly pays off for you. Do you actually incorporate your trips with your business as well? So a business trip. So, is it all linked together in any way, or is it two totally separate things altogether?
That is 100% how it all started.
Right.
The first video I made where I was like, wow, this is really an interesting kind of thing was, as I mentioned, I used to watch these videos as entertainment. And I noticed that nobody had ever made a video about Air France La Premiere, the first class, on their A380. And I had a meeting I had to get over to Porto for, and I was just looking around for a fare, and as kind of a out of curiosity, I looked up La Premiere out of Dulles, which was on the A380, and it was a big number, but it was achievable, especially because it was a business trip, and there was a lot more in it and whatever. And so I ended up making a video about that experience. It was really the first one. It was the first one where I was on the screen, and I remember showing some colleagues that I had done this, and we were watching the numbers go up. And I don't remember what they were at this point, but it was just shocking to see, like, people are watching this thing. This is actually getting legs. So to answer your question, yes. Initially, it was always if it wasn't a business trip, I wasn't going to make a video. I wasn't just going to travel for the sake of travel. But at this point, it's kind of flipped, and this has become an endeavor on its own. And now I will travel for specific flights if it makes a lot of sense. It's great if I can combine it with something, but that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, that's fair enough, isn't it? And I suppose now you're not just doing it for the aviation enthusiasts as well. You're doing it for the people who are going on holidays and things like that, aren't you? Just to share your experience of that particular airline or that particular airport or whatever, aren't you? So you're reaching out to a lot more people rather than just your aviation enthusiasts.
Yeah, there are two big groups of people who I think of when I'm making a video. Number one, I mean, you nailed it. Number one, it's the aviation enthusiasts. And then number two are the people who are doing research. A lot of people will reach out to me and leave comments or emails or whatever. So I know they're out there. And they're, maybe they're planning a honeymoon, or they're planning a big trip, or they're, taking a holiday or whatever. And they're deciding, okay, well, I could book, this seat, but does it make sense to pay for the upgrade? And then they'll find those videos, and I love the thought of being of service and helping them decide how to spend their hard-earned money, in the way that makes the most sense for them. And that's a really neat way, that a little tiny way, admittedly, but a way that I'm able to help a bit.
Absolutely, yeah, providing a service, aren't you?
Mm. Yes, definitely. We are here for the next 20 minutes, so if you have any last-minute questions for Jeb, get them into the chat now, and we will get through them as quickly as we can. We've got a couple of questions which we'll go through, and then we'll sort of begin to kind of wrap up the podcast. It has absolutely flown. I can't believe how quick it's gone already. But yeah, so Samuel Taylor Ackwood says, this is in regards to when we were mentioning about Scotland. Jeb has been to Edinburgh. That's where I live and my home city. So, yeah, small world. But
and I loved every minute of my time there. I cannot wait to get back to Scotland.
Fantastic. WWNB Gaming says, hello guys, just got out of class and enjoying the podcast. So to Jeb Brooks, hello, I have a question. This is sort of going off of what we sort of asked earlier, so we can just clarify for people sort of joining late. He says, what's your favourite aircraft? 1, in terms of looks from the outside, and 2, looks on the inside.
Well, that is a great question, and I'm glad I'm glad to hear you had a good. I'm assuming you had a good time in class. That's good. Keep learning. So it's actually the same answer, but we just talked about the outside before. Really, well, I guess we touched on it. But the A350 is my favorite from a looks right now. I just love those winglets, and then inside as well. We talked about the Dreamliners locking window shades and losing access to the control of that, but I'm all for the old school A350, window shade. So from the inside. Now, I think the extension to that question, though, is what an airline does with the interior. The airline buys the airplane from the aircraft manufacturer, Airbus, Boeing, whoever, and then buys the interior fittings from another company that designs that. So there are many beautiful airplanes inside, and you think you're crediting Boeing or Airbus, as you guys know, but really it's some other company. So the most beautiful airplane I've ever been in, I would have to go with it's that Emirates 777 again. I mean, it was just I was in that first class room. You had a room, and it was perfectly fitted out. The old school Emirates in their A380, even their business class of 777 is a little bit more gaudy, with all that gold and the lights and the shiny stuff, which I don't really care for. But the new first class is a little bit more toned down, a little bit more modern, more sleek. So I would say that's the most beautiful interior I've experienced.
Fantastic. He also asks, I've never heard of this, but maybe you have. Four Seasons, like a private jet company, are coming out with their A321XLR soon. Are you going to do a tour of it or fly on it?
Yeah, so great question, and I'm guessing he's a fellow statesider. So Four Seasons, or maybe Canadian for that matter. Four Seasons is a Canadian hotel brand. It's a very luxurious hotel brand, very high end. And one of the things that they have done to expand their company is to lease out, wet lease airplanes. And for a long time, they were wet leasing a 757 from Iceland Air. They fitted it out with sort of like BA1, a small number of fully lie-flat seats, and would fly from one city to the other. You'd book out a flight with them around the world, and you'd fly from one major city with a Four Seasons hotel to the next major city with a Four Seasons hotel. And a super luxurious, unbelievably expensive, round the world experience. I guess that wet lease expired, and now they've moved on to an A321. Which I appreciate that little bit of information. I don't think I knew that. So the answer is I would love to. I don't think I have that kind of time or resources, but if that changes, and if anybody from the Four Seasons is listening, I'm all ears. I'd love to, but no plans right now.
Yeah, I'll come along for the ride.
What you were saying about the Four Seasons. Oh, sorry, Tom.
I'll say we'll all go along for the ride as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll all tag along with you, Jeb, if you don't mind.
There'd be plenty of room. Trust me.
Yeah.
You all should absolutely look it up. There's some nice promotional videos from the Four Seasons about it. It's worth looking up.
Yeah, I'll just,
is it something? Oh, sorry, Tom. Can I just ask? Yeah, sorry. Is it something they do as if you can imagine a cruise? So you're going from you get a cruise and you go from, I don't know, country to country or whatever. So is it a similar kind of thing they're doing where you're flying from Four Seasons hotel to another Four Seasons hotel in another state or something, and like a cruise, if you will?
You nailed it. It's exactly right. I have a friend of mine who did it, and it sounds pretty impressive. There's another company called, I think it's Crystal or something like that, and they've got at least one 777 that's fitted out that way as well. I've seen that from the outside. I saw it parked at Fort Myers Airport in Florida not too long ago.
Right.
But yeah, those would be incredible experiences.
Wouldn't they? Huh? I didn't realize they did things like that.
You'll be interested to know, Ian, that Crystal 777 once went into Manchester to pick up Manchester United for a pre-season football /
the Crystal 777 does ring a bell, yeah, but I didn't realise it was done as an experience where you could fly from one place to another place and then just jet around everywhere as a holiday. So I believe they call it.
Let's clarify who the U is. It's Manchester United. It's not Jeb Brooks or it's not us.
Yeah, you imagine Crystal sending a 777 to pick Jeb up from Manchester. Yeah, just flying back to the States.
Won't be long now.
Yeah, that's it. Then you know you've made it, Jeb.
that will be when I hang up the hat. That'll be it.
Not before you bring a video out first.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Rob Brown Planespotting says, "Evening, guys. Hope all is well. All is definitely well. So evening to you." And again, WWNB Gaming. Last question for this evening from the comments says, "What's the hardest landing you've experienced?"
Hardest landing I've experienced. That's a great question. Okay, I can tell you. It was a 767-400. Where were we going? Oh, I don't remember where we're going. I think it must have been Atlanta. Yeah, it was Atlanta. Okay. So Salt Lake City to Atlanta, the 767-400. Now, a couple of interesting things about the 767-400 that you guys may know, but it doesn't help or it doesn't hurt to share to set the stage.
Cool.
The cockpit of the 767-400 is essentially a 777 cockpit. The airplane is a 767, but the sort of aerodynamics of it are I don't want to say off balance, but they're just different. United Airlines, it's interesting, just as a quick side note, this flight I'm talking about was on Delta, but on United, you're cross-trained. You're a 7.5 pilot, a 7.6 pilot, and a 7.6-400 pilot. Delta, the 767-400, is a separate crew base, so you're just trained for that. Anyway, we were coming out of Salt Lake City back into Atlanta, and I think a lot of people over-exaggerate landings as bad, particularly if you don't fly a whole lot. But I fly a whole lot, and this was a really bad landing. I think we were on the left main gear for much longer than we should have been. I think about there's I would have loved to have had you, Tom, recording the footage because it was. I think it would have been a really dramatic landing. It was quite rough.
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, I would love to have sort of. I mean, I don't get too many sort of rough landing footage anyway, but yeah, I mean, if you're gonna suggest me to film it, then more than happy to. If I was there at the time, but yeah, I mean that does sound quite. Quite a hairy landing.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't that windy. I think that anyway, nobody's perfect, but we survived. We were fine. The plane is still flying. We're all good.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, these pilots, they know what they're doing, don't they?
Exactly, and the airplanes are designed to. There's these things are sturdy machines, as we all know, and I often hear from folks who are nervous flyers who happen across my videos, and I remind them of what we all know and appreciate. This is the safest means of transportation.
Definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. Did you say it was Atlanta you were going into? Because they do get some weather there, don't they? They get some really rough weather, don't they?
Yeah, there are definitely some storms that come through.
Oh yeah, definitely. Have you been through many storms? Been diverted or anything like that when you've been coming to somewhere?
I have always wanted. This is a strange thing, but you guys get it. I've always wanted to be diverted, and I never have. I've been close, but I've never gotten that experience. I've certainly had my share of go-arounds, but never a diversion.
Yeah. I think I saw one of your go-arounds today when I was watching some of your stuff. Yeah, they're about as from a spotter's point of view, it's about as exciting as aviation gets, isn't it? When you see a plane going around, it's a major thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I got quite excited about a go around. Wasn't on it, but I saw it. when I did the East Midlands airport trip. It's in the video that's on the channel. Cheeky plug again. But it was a Kalita 747, and I don't know what happened, but I don't know if there was a helicopter that was either given clearance to come in first, and this was coming in, and the 747 was coming in quick, or it just looked like it was just off course big time, and then you just see it roar up, and there was quite a few people sort of nearby and stuff, and everybody went go around, and it's like, yeah, that's when you're witnessing something as something as simple as a go around, and everyone gets really, really excited about it.
Yeah.
But
that's great. Yeah.
So just a couple more sort of little bits from us, and then we'll begin to sort of wrap things up here. Do you have sort of a favorite place that you travel to, that you've been to more than most?
Yeah, I love Washington D.C. It's sort of like a second home for me. Internationally, I certainly think Cape Town is one of the most amazing cities on the planet. And not to mention Singapore, and I could go on, but I would say I'm more than anything, I love cities. I'm a city guy.
Have you been to Tokyo?
I have, yeah. I love Tokyo.
Yeah. It's on my bucket list to go to Japan someday. So.
Oh, you've got to.
Yeah. I love watching stuff on Tokyo, and anything to do with Japan. It's it fascinates me. It really, really does.
Yeah. It's on my bucket list as well, because I'd quite like to sort of experience the sort of the culture and things like that.
Absolutely.
To say that I've sort of been there and done it, sort of thing. But yeah. Any future plans then for travel? Obviously, given the current world situation, do you have any sort of future plans to as places to where to go and that?
Yeah. So breaking news. I don't know that it's really that breaking, because there's like two people who'd be interested, but I do have an international trip coming up. I'm very excited. I am headed, as long as everything continues to be open and available and safe and so forth, I'm planning to head over to make my way to Albania next month. So I've got some interesting, modes of transportation to get there.
Wow.
To sort of, what's interesting is the way that I do this, and I think other YouTubers as well, is you kind of like try to make a trip and get as much content as you can out of that trip. So it'll, I think, be 5 or 6 days with 4 or 5 videos out of it. So it's truly a work trip in that I'm going to be filming a lot, but really excited to be headed to a new part of the world for me here pretty soon. Again, as long as it remains safe to do so. I mean, as we've touched on, you got to be flexible at this point in time.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. It definitely sounds fascinating. But yeah, and lastly, for anybody, I mean, obviously you've got such a huge following on YouTube and that. Anybody that's sort of wanting to kind of maybe start their own channel, or get into kind of like say trip reporting, as we sort of touched upon earlier, but more sort of getting onto YouTube and sort of starting a channel. What kind of sort of advice to sort of end with would you give them in terms of creating a channel?
I think get started and be yourself. I had a quick story. When I hit 10,000 subscribers, I did a Q&A session, and a guy named Blake Edgington, who's a YouTuber. He's since retired to focus on his family, but he's a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. But he asked a question along these lines. He was just starting out as a trip reporter, and his experience was having been a flight attendant. And he said, "What do you do to start doing this?" And I said, first of all, the confidence. Give yourself the confidence to give it a go, and only you can do that. But number 2, be yourself. Don't try to copy somebody else's style or form or whatever, because the part of this that makes it sustainable is if you make content that you enjoy watching. You've got to make content that you could watch and enjoy. If you make content that somebody else watches and enjoys, you're going to lose steam over time. But by continuing to make content that you like to watch, it will continue to feed your enjoyment of the activity, which will cause the thing to grow, if that's what you want. But at the end of the day, give yourself permission to get started. Go and get started and be yourself.
Fantastic. Just got one question that's come in, and then we'll begin to wrap up. It's from Jack Regan, who says, do you have any plans on becoming a pilot?
So, yeah, great question. I have, I've been flying a fair amount, but have never taken the final leap of a check ride or anything like that. I just enjoy it, but I don't enjoy it enough to go all the way, I guess you'd say.
Yes. Well, that's going to sort of do it for this evening. Like I said, like 20 minutes ago, it absolutely flown by, and these podcasts do. From the moment they start to sort of this point, we're like, whoa, how did we get here so quick? But yes, a big thank you to everybody who has been watching, and of course a big thank you to yourself, Jeb, for taking the time out to speak to us this evening / your afternoon.
And a tremendous thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be one of the earlier guests in what is going to be the biggest aviation podcast out there. I'm convinced of that because you guys are doing it the right way, and I really do appreciate being asked to participate.
It means a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jeb.
But what we'll do now is we tend to kind of take this moment to kind of give a few shout outs to people that we want to say hello to, or just shout outs in general, really. We're going to kind of put you on the spot at the moment, Jeb, and we normally go with a guest first, so we'll give you an opportunity to sort of give a few shout outs to a few people, and as many people as you like, really.
Wow. Well, I'd like to thank all the folks who are making really good, high quality content on YouTube, because it gave me the inspiration to do it, and it's been one of the great joys of my life. And there are far too many of those folks to name. And then, of course, the most important of all is Suzanne. Many viewers of my videos will know her as the creative director. Mm-hmm. I know her as my fiance, and so much more. I wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm doing without her support and, frankly, her planning, because I'm not a planner, but she is. So I think I'd like to say thanks to those two, one group and one person.
Fantastic. Ian, we'll go with you to give some shout outs.
Right, I just thanks to you, Tom, for letting me co-host tonight.
Pleasure.
Thanks to you as well, Jeb, for being a fantastic guest tonight, and thanks to everybody who's been in the chat tonight asking questions. It's been an absolutely fantastic podcast, and happy days. Thank you.
You know that's going to start catching on as a little catchphrase now. Just every time you do a shout out, you just go "happy days" at the end.
Oh, there we go. I do enjoy him.
Fantastic. I'll give a few shout outs as well. I'll give one to Jack Regan, who says he'll have a cheeky shout out. So here's a cheeky shout out to yourself. A shout out to Santino Mamone, who is watching all the way from Australia. So hello to you. Sorry we couldn't get to your question. Let me just have a look here. I'll see if I can just quickly get onto it. I can't make sense of that. That might just be my eyesight. He just says, Jeb, that he loves your work, and he always reposts your videos on his social media just to kind of get more of a attention sort of on it.
Well, thank you to you and to everybody else who watches my videos. I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without you guys, and I'm so eternally grateful.
Wonderful. So my other shout outs go to Ian for stepping in again, of course. Sort of short notice again. We will try and rectify this issue as soon as. But thank you again, Ian.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you again, Jeb, for like I say, taking time out of your very busy schedule to talk to us this evening.
Well, and you are welcome, and thank you for adjusting your schedule to meet mine. I'm grateful to you, and I'm looking forward to continuing to follow your progress.
Thank you so much, and it's been it's been our absolute honour to have you on.
Absolutely,
thank you to everybody again that's been watching and asking questions for Jeb to answer. They've been very good questions, it's been a really good show, really good show. But now we're going to look ahead very quickly to the next show, because that's going to come around very quickly. It's going to be Sunday, and who have we got on this Sunday? So this Sunday evening, 7 p.m. normal time, UK time, of course, we do have Johnny Smith, who is an A340-600 cargo pilot for European Cargo, based in Bournemouth Airport. He will be joining us to talk about his travels, of course, to China to do PPE runs, and of course over to the States for the mail runs as well. So really looking forward to this. It's going to be very insightful, and especially with the current world climate as well. This is going to be very insightful. So definitely don't miss this. The link will go up in the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that one, so you can set your reminders. Other than that, that is where we end it for this evening. If you are new around here and you are watching for the first time and you're not subscribed, why not? That's a joke, obviously. But do feel free to hit the subscribe button. It'll make it'll mean a lot to us, and it'll make the channel stand out a little bit more. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Not far, really, only about 100 odd away. So any sort of help from anybody that's not subscribed would be very grateful. Very appreciative. That's the word I was after. And yeah, other than that, we'll be here again on Sunday evening, few days time rather. I'm getting all mixed up now. Saturday night, 7 p.m. UK time with Johnny Smith. So yes, we are going to say our goodbyes. So Jeb, do you want to say goodbye to everybody that's still watching?
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone who's watching and who's listening to the recording. It's been wonderful. I really appreciate you listening to the end. But thanks, Tom and Ian, for having me on. This has been wonderful.
Not a problem. Ian, do you want to say goodbye to everyone?
Yeah, goodbye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And thanks again, Jeb. It's been absolutely fantastic. What a cracking show. Happy days.
I'm going to put a little hashtag in the next one. I'm going to do that. For myself, thank you everybody again for watching. Hopefully you'll join us on Sunday. If you want to follow Jeb on his socials, you can. They're in the description as well. And we will see you on Sunday evening, 7 p.m. So for now, take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you on Sunday. Bye-bye.
Bye.